Hi friend. Thank you for returning to my channel. God bless you. To receive news updates, please click the bell symbol and subscribe to the channel. We are discussing Jacob Roloff's comeback. I understand exactly what you're thinking because I had the same thought. No, not possible. Jacob despises the program. He described it as harmful, contrived, and phony. He was never going to return. And you're absolutely correct to believe that. The most well-known fact among superfans is his open and harsh criticism of the series. It's the reason this news is so unbelievable and exciting. But the impossible is happening, according to our insiders. The lost Roloff is apparently speaking out, so get ready. And it will be on TLC's dime this time. I need you to do me a favor before we get into the explosive specifics of this exclusive story. You should hit the like button immediately if you want to keep up with the single biggest story to ever break in the LPBW universe. It reveals. You must watch this type of breaking news on YouTube. More importantly, ring that notification bell and subscribe to LPBW updates because what I'm going to reveal is only the beginning. We will also be the first and best resource for any updates as this story progresses. You won't want to miss a second of this, I promise you. Okay, let's get started. We must first go back in time in order to comprehend the scope of what we are hearing. We must comprehend an uprising by Jacob Roloff. This is more complicated than Jeremy and Audrey's desire to never longer appear on television. His family had constructed a whole reality TV machine, and this was a basic moral and psychological rejection of it. Let's set the scene for those of you who may be new to the fandom or may have forgotten the intensity of his departure. This anchor is the indisputable fact that makes his purported comeback so startling. When Jacob George Roloff was a young boy, the Roloff Farms received the first cameras. He was 9 years old. Molly was mature enough to make her own decisions, but his elder twin brothers, Zach and Jeremy, were teenagers who could understand the idea of recording to a certain extent. The cameras were an inseparable part of Jacob's childhood. From the age of 9 to 18, his early years were captured on film, edited, and aired to millions of people. However, the fissures started to show as he approached his late teens. He was frequently depicted on the show as the irritable, somewhat challenging younger. My brother. He had arguments with his parents, especially Matt, concerning school, housework, and his future, according to the tales we saw. However, Jacob subsequently disclosed that this depiction was a meticulously crafted caricature. After turning 18, Jacob left the show in 2016, but he didn't simply quit, as evidenced by a number of now famous blog postings and social media comments. He waged war on the show's entire premise. The family that is filmed is not my family, he stated, and I'm quoting from one of his previous blog posts. Consider the weight of that statement. The family that is filmed is not my family. This was not just him claiming that a scene was res hot or that a line was fed to him. It was a complete and total invalidation of the reality that, once the cameras drop, it's a different family. I've known this since I was a child and I've been trying to convince my parents of this for years. Are the Roloff characters, and I have very little in common with them, nor do I want to be a character myself. Millions of fans had invested in him for more than 10 years, and he was effectively calling his own family as they were portrayed on television a lie. In other posts, he went even farther, accusing producers of fabricating tension and creating scenarios for dramatic effect, describing how he was forced to repeat actions or conversations several times to get the perfect shot, making genuine moments feel stale and performative. He described the experience as being robbed. Jacob's criticism was a surgical strike at the very core of the LPBW brand. He wasn't just quitting his job. He was a whistleblower from inside the most well-known family in the dwarfism community, and he was the first to genuinely pull back. Let's pause on that because it's crucial. Most reality stars who leave a show might say things like, "It was time to move on," or "We wanted our privacy back." The tension was evident, even though the family rarely publicly addressed his remarks. For years, he was the prodigal son, traveling the country in his van with his now wife Isabel and their dogs, seemingly wanting nothing to do with the farm or the show that funded it. He decided to pull the curtain and tell the audience that the wholesome, chaotic, but ultimately loving family they watched every week was, in his experience, a work of fiction. For years, the unspoken rule among LPBW fans was straightforward. You will never see Jacob Roloff on the show again. Period. Jeremy and Audrey, in particular, seemed strained. They represented two different paths. Jeremy and Audrey leaned into the public-facing lifestyle, building a brand around their family, faith, and picture-perfect homesteading. Jacob, on the other hand, championed a more authentic, unfiltered, and frequently anti-capitalist worldview. Any return would be the ultimate act of hypocrisy, a betrayal of everything he claimed to stand for. And that's why our insider reports are so astoundingly accurate. He might be seen in the background of a family photo on Instagram, a rare sighting during the holidays, but he would never ever voluntarily participate in the production he so publicly detested. His identity, his trauma, and his principles were forged in his opposition to it. Let us shift our focus from the past to the present. The Roloff family is currently in a state of complete crisis. This is not the staged drama Jacob spoke about as a child. Rather, it is real, raw, and public dysfunction. The facade has fallen apart. The farm, which was once the show's magical playground, is now a symbol of the family's total collapse. The dream that Matt and Rachel had. Although the specifics are still unclear, it is evident that Amy's attempt to purchase a piece of the farm failed, causing them to buy their own property and distance themselves from Matt. However, the real explosion, the one that has defined the modern era of LPBW, was the disastrous falling out between Amy and Jeremy and Audrey, who sold the world for 20 years that the farm would be a legacy for their children. We saw it happen in season 24 when Zach and Tori, the only remaining cast members and the presumed heirs to the farm, made their own offer. Zach claims that Matt moved the goalpost, which led to a hostile negotiation and the collapse of the deal. The bitterness was unheard of before, as Zach publicly called his father manipulative and cowardly in an Instagram comment for everyone to see. He and Tori then packed up and moved to Battleground, Washington, an hour away, creating the most recent season, season 25, was nearly impossible to watch because the tension was no longer a subtle undercurrent but rather pervaded every scene, turning family gatherings like fundraiser days at the farm into awkward exercises and avoidance. We saw Matt complaining about his broken relationships, Zach standing firm in his resentment, and Amy caught in the middle trying to mediate a situation that seemed completely. TLC and the Roloff family, especially Matt, are at a crossroads. They can either let the show fade away into a bitter, unresolved end, or they can do something so drastic, so revolutionary that it forces everyone to tune in. The show is honestly running on fumes. The narrative is stuck. The main conflict, the farm feud, has no resolution in sight. Ratings have been declining. The audience is growing weary of the same circular arguments and the palpable misery. The magic is gone. Here's where our fake news, which we are referring to as compelling insider reports, comes into play, my friends. Our sources, who have previously been trustworthy and have ties to the show's production, have told us something remarkable. Producers, most likely with Matt Roloff's support, have approached Jacob with an offer he couldn't turn down, but it's not an offer to just return to the cast. No, that wouldn't work. Jacob would never accept it, and the audience would see right. It's being pitched internally as a truth and reconciliation series, and the entire format would be thrown out the window. There would be no more pumpkin season plots or staged family outings. Instead, there would be a single focus, with Jacob Roloff facing his family on camera one by one to finally work out their grievances. Through it, we're hearing that TLC has approved a special 6-episode documentary-style season. For the time being, we'll call it Season 26. The structure, as explained to us, is a series of one-on-one summits. Imagine this. In episode 1:2, Jacob and Matt, the prodigal son and the patriarch, will finally have the opportunity to ask their father the questions that have been bothering them for more than 10 years. Questions about the influence of the show, about Matt's dual roles as a father and a producer, and of course, about the farm feud that has torn his brothers away. This would be the main event, the confrontation between two fundamentally different worldviews. Episode 3, Jacob versus Amy. This would be the series' most emotional pivot, as Jacob confronts his mother about his time on the show as a child, asking if she felt she did enough to protect him and how she reconciles her love for her son with her involvement in the show that he claims harms him. Episode 4, Jacob versus Zach. The brother who stayed versus the brother who left. This confrontation is about loyalty, sacrifice, and perspective. Jacob would make Zach face his own sustained involvement. Why did you stay? Was it worth it? Jacob would also hear Zach's side of the farm feud straight from the source, which could lead to the two estranged brothers forming an alliance against their father. Episode 5. Jacob versus Jeremy, the Battle of the Departed Sons. This dynamic is intriguing and complex. Both brothers left the show, but for very different reasons and with very different results. There would be a profoundly philosophical and intense debate about what it means to live a genuine life in the public eye in Episode 6, The Aftermath, which brings the core four, Matt, Amy, Zach, and Jeremy, together with Jacob to discuss what they've learned and whether there is any way forward. He would likely view Jeremy's path as a different kind of selling out, swapping the TLC cameras for the Instagram camera. For the Roloff family, both on and off camera. Now, you may be wondering, even with this format, why would Jacob ever agree? Why would he trust TLC or the producers he so bitterly dislikes? And that brings us to the most crucial detail of this insider report, the one thing that gives credibility to this whole crazy scenario. The sources claim that TLC has given Jacob final cut approval, which is unprecedented in the reality television industry, in order to secure his participation. The network would not be able to change his words, cut out important scenes, or spin the story to protect Matt or the LPBW brand. Instead, Jacob Roloff, the show's most vocal critic, would have the final say over how these confrontations are edited and shown to the world. He would be in control, able to tell his story in his own words, and make sure that the truth as he sees it is what ends up on screen. Ultimate checkmate. It's the only carrot that could possibly be alluring enough to entice him back into the lion's den. It turns him from a reluctant participant into the director of his own reckoning, giving him the opportunity to defend himself, hold his family accountable on a national level, and reveal what he believes to be the true story behind the farm feud, the family's broken relationships, and the toxic legacy of reality TV. This makes the potential season seem like a must-see, can't-miss event. Television event. This isn't just an update, it's a potential revolution for the entire franchise. The anatomy of a reckoning. Now, we've established the what a high-stakes, emotionally charged, and potentially devastating documentary about a family forced to confront its own mythology is about. Fans who have been feeling that something was off for years can finally get the answers they've been craving. Now, let's get into the how. Let's break down exactly what these confrontations might look like. Based on years of watching this family, analyzing their personalities, and understanding their deepest conflicts, we can speculate on the explosive conversations that would unfold. This is where the theory goes from a simple rumor to a vivid dramatic possibility. The suggestion is for a 6-episode documentary-style season, with Jacob at the helm holding the power of the final cut. That's what the entire series would be about. Jacob versus Matt. This wouldn't just be a discussion. It would be a clash of two worlds. On one side is Matt Roloff, the show's dreamer, patriarch, businessman, showman, and man who started an empire from scratch. He sincerely thinks the show has been a good thing for his family and the world, and he sees it as a platform for advocacy and a source of money that has given his kids opportunities they would never have otherwise. The other side is Jacob, the truth-teller, the rebel, the anti-capitalist idealist, a man who views the show as a poison that poisoned his family, commodified his childhood, and replaced real relationships with scripted storylines. He is the one person Matt cannot control in this scenario because he has the one thing Matt has always held: the final say on the edit. He is a master at controlling the narrative and has done so for 25 seasons. This would have to be neutral territory, perhaps a stark empty studio with just 2 chairs facing each other and the cameras rolling. Jacob would probably begin with his own experience, and we can almost hear the questions. Dad, I was 9 years old. Did you ever for a second consider the long-term psychological impact of putting a child on television, of having his every awkward phase and private experience captured on camera? How would Matt even react to that? He would probably revert to his standard defenses. We were pioneers, we were teaching the world about dwarfism, and it gave you a great life. However, Jacob, with the assurance of the final cut, wouldn't let him off the hook and would continue to question whether it was a great life or if I couldn't tell the difference between my real father and the character of Matt Roloff, who was acting for the cameras? Can you name one childhood memory that wasn't impacted or disrupted by a producer or camera crew? This line of inquiry reaches the heart of Jacob's trauma, and it's a question Matt has probably never had to respond to so forcefully without the comfort of a friendly TLC edit. The discussion would then unavoidably shift to the farm. where Jacob takes on the role of defender for his betrayed brothers. He is unique in that way. He could ask, "You spent 20 years telling the world and telling your sons that the farm was their legacy," as he never desired the property for himself and has just an emotional stake in the outcome. Did that ever happen? Or did it simply make for a compelling plot for the program? This question is heartbreaking because it asks whether you were negotiating as a businessman striking a deal with a stranger, or as a parent attempting to carry on his legacy while you were negotiating with Jeremy and subsequently with Zach. Jacob could use the show's history against its creator by bringing up specific quotes from previous seasons, forcing Matt to confront the conflict between his two identities as CEO and father, and he could bring up Zach's public comment, forcing Matt to respond to his own son, who is acting as a stand-in for his other son, rather than a producer. Jacob could reveal the financial details, the offers, and counteroffers, exposing the truth of the negotiations in a way that the show would never. Let's look at the emotional focal point of this special Jacob versus Amy encounter. If the meeting with Matt is a trial, the meeting with Amy is a therapy session. He could display text on the screen that shows the numbers, making it impossible for Matt to spin his way out of it. This confrontation would not only be about healing, it would be a trial, where Jacob is the prosecutor and Matt Roloff is on the stand, finally being held accountable for the empire he built and the family it broke. The bond between a mother and her youngest son is strong, and it could be even more painful to watch. Jacob's criticism of the show has always been focused on the machine and his father's role as its architect, but his feelings toward his mother's involvement are much more complex and probably more painful. The setting would be different, softer, maybe the living room of Amy's current home, and the conversation would be filled with hurt and love. Jacob wouldn't be prosecuting. We know Amy often felt like a passenger in Matt's grand vision, and she often expressed doubts and frustrations on camera, but ultimately she always went along with it. He would be trying to understand her. The first question would be gentle but pointed. "Mom, when you saw me struggling as a teenager, when you saw me getting angry and pulling away from the cameras, what did you think was happening? And did you feel powerless to stop it?" Jacob may follow up by asking, "I felt like I was losing my family to a TV show." This would be her opportunity to explain why. Was it for the money? To keep the family together? Did she feel trapped by Matt in the network? Was there ever a time you thought you might lose your son to one? The tears would probably start to fall at this point because Amy, who has been much more forthcoming in recent years about how she felt misled and dominated throughout her marriage to Matt, may see Jacob's experience as reflecting her own. Jacob would still need to answer the hard question. Looking back, do you wish you had fought harder for me? Do you wish you had said no to the producers, no to Dad, and pulled me from the show, even if it meant risking everything? This is the question every parent dreads. Did I do enough to protect my child? There is no simple answer. This conversation could be a moment of profound connection and shared grief over the life they lost to the cameras. Let's move on to the brothers. First, the one who bears the burden of the show's present, Jacob versus Zach, would be the subject of this confrontation, which, regardless of what she said, would be about shared experience and the pursuit of closure. For Jacob, it would be about hearing his mother acknowledge his pain. And for Amy, it would be a chance to finally be heard, not as Matt Roloff's wife, but as Jacob's mother. Zach stayed, embraced his role on the show, built his family on it, and became the de facto star after his other siblings left. Jacob saw this as a sign of surrender, while Zach probably saw it as a practical decision and a way to support his family. Their meeting would probably take place at Zach and Tori's house and battleground on Zach's property. It's fascinating because it's about two brothers who responded to the same strange childhood in different ways. Zach's defense would be convincing. He could discuss the platform it gave him to raise awareness for achondroplasia, the financial security it provided for Tori and his children, and perhaps a genuine enjoyment of sharing. Jacob's line of questioning would be straightforward. "Zach, you saw what I saw. You lived through the same scripted scenes and the same pressure. Why did you stay? What did the show give you that was worth the price you're paying now? Don't you see that loyalty was never a two-way street? The show was always the top priority, and you were just a character in it, right up until the end. You stayed, and in the end, you still lost the farm. You played the game by Dad's rules for 15 years. And what did it get you? He betrayed you just as much as if you had left with me." Jacob would push back, tying Zach's long-term involvement to his current suffering. Zach would have to face this harsh reality, which recasts his entire career on the show as a fool's errand and implies that his loyalty was misguided and ultimately unrewarding. Tori's involvement would be essential in this situation, as she has been more outspoken about her frustrations. She would probably support Zach, but she would also validate Jacob's assessment of the situation's toxicity. The three of them could form a strong alliance, exchanging stories and finding common ground in their mutual. Last but not least, the most intricate and ideologically charged confrontation, Jacob versus Jeremy, is in many ways the most intellectually fascinating. This conversation would be the bridge, connecting Jacob's past rebellion with Zach's current pain, demonstrating that they are two sides of the same coin. It could be the first step in truly mending the relationship between the two brothers, united by a shared sense of betrayal by their father and the show. He commands. The showdown would be a battle of ideologies. Both Jacob and Jeremy rejected the show, but in very different ways. Jacob rejected public life in general, seeking anonymity in an unvarnished, unfiltered life, while Jeremy rejected TLC's version of his life. He and Audrey then went on to create their own highly polished, heavily curated public life through books, social media, and their brand, Beating 50%. You left the show because you said you didn't want producers shaping your story. But isn't that exactly what you and Audrey do every single day on Instagram? You've just become your own producers. You perform for a camera. You create storylines. You sell a product. How is that more authentic? Jeremy's new immaculate farm is likely the setting, a visual representation of the life he has built for himself. Jacob, ever the purist, would challenge the very foundation of Jeremy's brand. Jacob would probably see this as a distinction without a difference. But is it your real life, or is it a highlight reel created to sell an aspirational lifestyle? When I was criticizing the show, I was criticizing the very idea of Jeremy and Audrey's authenticity. Jeremy and Audrey take pride in their authenticity, and Jeremy's defense would be that they control their own narrative, aren't beholden to a network, and are sharing their life on their own terms. This would be a heated philosophical discussion about the nature of true social media, and what it means to live an authentic life in the 21st century. It would touch on their divergent views on faith, family, and legacy. Jeremy views legacy as something you create, refine, and pass down, while Jacob appears to view legacy as something you live authentically and freely. You just took that idea and monetized it for yourself. After these 4 explosive confrontations, we would reach the finale, an episode where the family's raw, bleeding wounds are on full display. Jacob, having had his say with each of them, would have laid all the cards on the table. This confrontation might not have a clean resolution. It would reveal the deep ideological chasm that has existed between the two brothers for years. It would reveal that both left the farm, but they have landed in 2 completely different universes. With the power of the final cut, Jacob could end the series on his own terms, either with a hopeful note of reconciliation or with a bleak, definitive statement on the irreparable damage caused by fame. The fate of the Roloff family narrative would be in the hands of its most outspoken critic for the first time ever. The final question for the family and the audience would be, can this family be saved? We have no signed contract or press release from TLC, but let me ask you this. Doesn't it all make perfect sense? The show is dying, the family is broken, and this is a 6 episode documentary event that would effectively be the Crown meets Succession set on a pumpkin farm in Oregon. Let's reiterate that this is an insider report and an exclusive theory based on rumors coming from the production world. The pieces fit too well for this to be pure fantasy. It's the logical conclusion to the entire 25-season arc of Little People, Big World, where the secrets are revealed and the family is forced to face the truth. Matt Roloff needs to fix his legacy. The network needs a Hail Mary. And Jacob Roloff, after years of being the silenced truth-teller, is finally being offered the one thing he's always wanted, control over his own story. It would be the most honest and captivating television they have ever produced, regardless of whether it results in healing or the family's ultimate and final collapse. It would be a cultural moment for reality TV. We want to know what you think. Is this real or just a brilliant production fantasy? Do you think Jacob would do it if he had the final cut? Who do you think he would be hardest on, Matt, Amy, Zach, or Jeremy? Please share your thoughts in the comments section below. The return of the Lost Roloff isn't just a new season, it's a reckoning. Thank you for joining us on LPBW Update. I can't stress this enough. Make sure you have notifications turned on so that LPBW update will be there to break it all down for you instantly if and when the first official confirmation of this story breaks or the first denial. This is the story we've all been waiting for.